Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for making sure that I did that. I am still a novice in technology. I'm still learning every day. Why was an outside provider chosen for full remote learning? Why aren't non-Ts able to provide instruction based on the curriculum used in the actual classroom? It all has to do with one thing. How do you do the streaming within a hybrid model? We are continuously working on that. The full remote learning platform is exactly that. It's where the curriculum is, where the exercises are. It is not necessarily an outside teacher. In our case, it's not an outside teacher doing anything with that platform. It's fully online. So we have to, under Chapter 150E, state law, negotiate change in working conditions. Going to hybrid or remote under the statute is considered change in working conditions. There is no perfect outside provider with curriculum, to be quite honest. It's very new to many of us, myself included as a father. It was chosen via two different ways. Edgenuity in 6 to 12 and Seesaw is predominantly at K-5. Our Edgenuity has always been used for students looking for specific courses at the secondary level, and we don't run them. For example, a student wants Latin, we would run through Edgenuity the Latin course for that individual student because we don't offer Latin. Or for credit recovery, a student who's been out medically, suspended, a student who's at risk because they're not coming to school, we would use that as a catch-up. It is endorsed. It is now also endorsed by the state because they're one of the 3 providers. And so that's the general question or answer. We are not yet anywhere close to saying to you as parents that instruction is being provided by non-staff that work for me. That is not where I am as superintendent. So you have to bear with me because we had to give an option, but I don't necessarily have the option of hiring more people. If we could get a federal stimulus bill passed, that might be a different question. Then I think we would run into the issue of, do we have licensed people to be able to become educators to support us? So bear with us on that one. That's still a work in progress. It is not a willingness. There's a question here. The big question we are struggling with is design of the hybrid model with teachers not willing to live stream or recorded lessons. Students will only get 2 days of teaching from teachers. Again, I'm going to refer to the prior lesson, prior comment. I am not at the point of suggesting that the administration has agreed to anything to do that we're not live streaming or recording or zooming into classrooms. That is not where I am as the superintendent at this stage. But under 150E, I have to negotiate it on behalf of the school committee. Low numbers coming into the building. Okay, I'm sorry, everything's constantly moving here on my screen. With the low numbers coming to the building, you had mentioned possibly having teachers available to teach the remote students on the home days. Are you still looking at that? Yes, I am. It's also a financial situation, but yes, I am looking at it on behalf of the district's needs. If students likely to be graded in 6th grade part in class, will they be able to remote mask while seated and learning at their desks? There is some potential for more likely what I would call mask breaks, but not necessarily removal of the mask, except when having things like lunch. Will there be updated school supply list for school hybrid? Yes, there will be at this time. Please do not go out and purchase anything because all of this is going to look somewhat different. I will make sure that I add this to my things to do with my administrators. Books, workbooks, yes, we will be providing much of our stuff technology-wise, but things like our math workbooks that we use and all that, the intent here is to still utilize them during remote and in hybrid model. We're working currently, has there been a program decided to purchase for elementary schools? Elementary schools is the toughest one right now in terms of anything to do with the programming. We're trying to utilize, if you will, like other districts around us, a number of different programs, one of them Seesaw right now. Google Classroom is still our #1 option, of course, with a lot more going on than we saw in the springtime. Students assigned, remote kids assigned to teachers in our classrooms. I referred to the answer before. I'm trying to work out what that model will look, would actually look like. Can families choose which cohort their children is in? For example, Tuesday, Thursday. We can't say that you can choose it, but we're going to try to work with families, understanding that work schedules, et cetera, are important. Our number one issue is siblings and creating cohorts as much as possible because it's best for families. The hybrid model that's currently being worked on at the high school, this is a high school, is currently, we're trying to make sure that students who selected their courses as well as required classes, that there's a schedule for them in the hybrid model that does not take away them not seeing all of their classes within that week. So the hybrid model at the high school is significantly more complicated because they have multiple teachers. On average, students have as many as 7 different teachers versus at the elementary level, they may have 2 or 3. Just have to bear with us. They are finalizing it. We have a couple of quirks where students are not able to be fit into certain classes that they want, and we're trying to address those. How do parents adequately plan for childcare for K students who will not find out which hybrid schedule they are until the end of August? We are, and then after screening, it's to the person asking the question, it is a work in progress in order to try to facilitate bus runs, staffing needs. We currently have multiple requests for leaves from staff that I have to figure out. And then, yes, it will be the end of August. It's probably going to be the earliest that you're going to see actual specifics of the schedule. Currently, can a parent of a child with an IEP request a 4-day hybrid? Currently, that's utilized through the sub-separate process of students in the sub-separate program, but that does not mean that we won't be looking at those situations because of at-risk students. So why do we use the Nortontown data about COVID-19 as being low now, but when the reality is when school starts, our district will have staff students from the surrounding towns attending each school. That makes the Norton Department of Health numbers null and void or skewed at best. That's your opinion. Why do we contact if my children do not need to attend on same days? Who do I contact? You can send an email to Jennifer O'Neill right on the website, or you can send it to my office. You can actually call and leave a message as well. When will we be likely to know that school times will be and which days of the week? School times right now have not changed. They're as published. However, we do know we're going to have issues with, the transportation, and the start of the school day and end of the school day is going to be problematic. It's going to be based on how many students we actually have to bus. Less amount of students we have to bus, the quicker. The more students we have to, the more significant of an issue. The question on seat on a bus, that's part of the survey that we sent out, and our anticipation is to try to, while we have required busing and then we have paid and ride, both of those situations are being addressed. It's going to be based on the number. I don't see it being a problem, but it's just going to take time. We need as much accurate numbers as possible, and as of yesterday, we still had 1,000 students that we didn't have a response to the schedules. We have thought about the middle school teachers and elementary teachers being the people who change rooms, not the students. That's a work in play right now, but you will have an answer on that as well. Question for the hybrid model. I know there are many factors involved. However, are you looking to base it by alpha, last name, or street location? We're looking at siblings first and foremost, and then alpha and street location is not a priority for us simply because I don't want to create classroom spaces where it literally becomes all students on an IEP or all students on a 504 or all students this or all students that. So it's still more of a traditional model, but it doesn't mean that we won't have to go to that depth as part of the process. Students' Chromebooks will be returned to them in some cases. In some cases, they'll be getting the very ones that they had before. All students for September will be on one-to-one in the district. We have that. Some of the machines are older. An example, for example, my child is getting their 8th grade Chromebook back because there's a back order on technology. which I find to be interesting. Middle school discussion options still run before and after school clubs. Everything to do with clubs, activity, and athletics is totally on hold right now. We still do not have clarity on creating further cohorts or having the impact of athletics. It's very frustrating because we've been waiting for it. We were supposed to get it by this Monday, and right now I don't think we're going to see anything until maybe next week. All students will have a question on students on remote model. If you're in Norton Public School, you will receive the Chromebook for grades 2 through 12 or the iPad for pre-K through 1. You're still an enrolled student, and so therefore we are still wanting you to have all those needs. Edgenuity and CSAR has a lot of self-paced. I'm going to be releasing a Edgenuity video to you as parents, probably sometime today or tomorrow. It just gives you the background of how those courses uses, and there's a lot of questions about that. And it does utilize the state curriculum frameworks for Massachusetts, which are our NPS curriculum that we utilize. The question is, we were asked to decide by Friday. However, there's so many unknowns in both models. Will parents be allowed to change? Yes, we do foresee that you're probably going to want to change after you hear something you don't like or don't want, or because you do like something, or vice versa. That is going to be a working issue. And we understand, again, that it's a fluid issue. For hybrid students, will they be streaming? Again, that's an issue that still needs to be addressed. Will this cohort switch off? Example, quarter A will be Tuesday and Thursday on week 1, and then Friday. No, they'll maintain their schedule. So if you're cohort A, Tuesday, Thursday, then you're always Tuesday, Thursday. We are going to, there's a question here about for kids, will there be time for kids to meet with teachers, tour the buildings, meet the teachers before? We're probably going to be doing some of that remotely, but not necessarily physically. Just because of how many people we'd have to come in. However, we're not against doing that. It's just right now, it's a little bit of a struggle with that particular schedule. But at least what I'm trying to do is get some type of a remote meeting, excuse me, between teachers and students. Classes, there's a question here about classes being cleaned. Classes will be cleaned every single day. High-end areas, there'll be a informational coming out to you about the cleaning process, how often things are cleaned, when things are cleaned, so on and so forth. And we put in a schedule that includes our philosophy for the cleaning. It includes the chemicals that we are using. It includes who will be doing it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That'll be published. Are we still combining buses for middle school and the elementary schools? That's all going to depend on how many people need to take the bus. But right now, the biggest issue is 4 to 8 busing that we cut a few years ago. So we see that as something that's going to have to potentially change. We are looking at cohorts based on bus routes because of where students are coming from. But again, we're getting a ton of requests for the siblings situation, so that could be used, but probably further down the road. The question on remote programming and access to teachers, that's a work in progress. I apologize. I know that's one of the biggest concerns, but that is an issue that I have to collectively bargain. We're going to try to keep siblings that are in different schools in the same cohort if we can. There's no guarantee there, but that is a priority. If you still have 1,000 families that have not entered their preference, can you still say that it will be only about 10 students per classroom? Yes, most of our classroom spaces, except in grade 6 and then at the high school because of choice, at 50% would be somewhere around the 12 or less, but with students backing out at the elementary level in particular, I think safely under 12, but I believe it's going to be single digits in many cases. IEP services in the remote option still have to be delivered, and that includes remotely. We still have to do it. We're being told we still have to do it. So anything to do with OTPT speech, teletherapy will be provided. Anything to do with actually delivery a model, that's one of the biggest questions. How do you take the same number of students that belong to a teacher who's responsible to provide direct services under IEP and put that person into multiple roles of remote and hybrid without streaming. So that's one of the issues that we really have to push.
Just to kind of to piggyback off of that, Joe, the state is also mandating that we have individual service plans for each child. So how those services will be addressed in any learning environment and any learning model. So hybrid, remote, in-person, fully, what it will look like. And as we get closer to school starting, the students liaison or team chair will be in touch with families to go over that in more detail.
The question about sixth graders will be able to get a virtual tour of the middle school building. We're going to attempt to do that before the beginning of school. Can we create mock classrooms at the elementary, middle, and high school, and then show us the classrooms? Yes, that'll be. We actually have pictures available, and we'll release that as part of our plan that goes out. You'll see it. Again, you'll receive that plan no later than Monday, and maybe as soon as Friday afternoon. I don't like sending emails on Friday afternoon because I find them not to be read. But regardless, I'll send it out once or twice if we have to. But we've already created pictures of classrooms. Seesaw right now is the #1 platform that we're utilizing for elementary, but that doesn't mean that we won't be utilizing others. Will elementary students still get recess time? Yes. We have some specific rules around recess, but yes, I would actually say that they're going to get more breaks than usual just because of the mask wearing and all of that stuff. So there will be, this is a question to do with hybrid model, if there are positive COVID cases. The COVID response that we have to publish for staff and for you as families and to the Department of Public Health in town, Board of Health, and to the Mass Department of Public Health and to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is a situational student population by classroom or classrooms, building, and district. So an example of that would be there was a positive case in X room, that automatically begins the play of it. Is it a classroom issue, a building issue, or a district issue? Why a district? They're siblings. They were all at the baseball field the night before. Any of that could make it a district issue. Is it a building issue? We know for certain student was X, Y, and Z places. Those are the only places affected. That may lead to a building closure. And then specifically a student situation where a student hasn't been in school, test positive, that will also be a potential of an entire classroom and or an entire school having to be closed. All of those days have to be made up just like snow days. There are the question about guidelines for what merits a shutdown be published. Yes, well, to the last question, yes, it's very specific. We will publish those with you. To show you what kind of, how do we respond to each of the situations. Governor yesterday announced towns are below 1% with the virus and has sees in-class learning very much an option, at least somewhat right now. If this remains, will the school committee look to get back children to 5 days a week? School committee is committed to looking at this 6 weeks from now, 6 weeks from the start of students. That's what we're going with at this point. Clearly, I understand that the question talks about where folks are. Earlier, you heard a question about, you know, if people are coming from out of town. Again, these are opinions, folks. All of us have opinions on this. One side uses one doctor, another side uses another doctor. You use a doctor, I use a different doctor, and everybody's got a different opinion. There's a lack of leadership, in my opinion, with some of this. But the data does show Georgia is a very bad example, and everybody wants to talk about Georgia. The fact of the matter is that Georgia did not even require masks in schools. So right off the bat, it's not comparable to some of the things that we're doing as one example. Do teachers feel comfortable and safe coming into the hybrid model? I would suggest that's a question that needs to be asked of the teachers. I can't speak for them. I will tell you that I've gotten an overwhelming number of individual communications of folks just saying that, you know, as long as it's safe and we're trying to utilize protocols as much as possible, that we should be able to. I know that some people don't care about this next statement, but my wife is a member of the Norton Teachers Association. I'm not sure that her husband, the superintendent, would want her to come into a building that's not safe. My child is a school choice student in Norton Public Schools attending Norton High School. I am not sure that anybody should think that I would be bringing my child to a school that's not safe. I'm going to leave it at that, but those questions can be addressed to teachers as you wish. Some of the same questions. Flexible seating with students on 504. Flexible seating is a big issue, but it's something, again, that we'll have to look at individual student cases, just because it is a document that we have to follow. But most of the flexible seating is currently not in the rooms because we are mandated to have students facing one way and having their own desks and location. Yeah, there's a question here about kids working remotely. Is there a better plan for this year and our parents going to get a better understanding? Yeah, we want to throw away the idea of what happened in the spring, that we all entered into crisis, myself, my staff, you, our children, and what we want to do is we want to come up with as much of a streamline of what that looks like. Our biggest issue that we're having, to go back to the original question that I asked earlier today, is that I'm having a real big issue with staffing. How do you do both? We are putting on the table everything to do with video recording, Zooming, and streaming. And again, it's a process through collective bargaining that I have to utilize. Anytime a student goes into a quarantine situation, then we could potentially move that student depending on the days. Typically, a quarantine is 14 days. And then there's the potential that that student, yes, there's the potential that student would be moved to remote, so they're working from home and not falling further behind. The kids on a school closure, yes, the issue would be if I have a case of COVID-19, the idea that we would just flip to the next day we're all remotely isn't as easy as that, because now we have different students that we have to move to remote learning. It would probably be somewhere around a 24 to 48 hour switch. Counselors will be available during the process. One of the things that we're trying to figure out is the 10-day of training with the teachers around PPEs and all of that stuff, and meeting students and seeing students, is getting our counselors to meet with students who are in fact having areas of extreme anxiety. Mask breaks can occur in any area that's going to provide them 10 feet. So you might be taking there's a question about bad weather and mask breaks. Those mask breaks can take place in the building, not just outside the building, but we would have to break groups up. An example would be 5 students leave the classroom and are going into another location, so on and so forth. If I have to, a continuation of days made up because of snow days. Anytime I close a building for anything of an emergency, if the students aren't working right away the next day, then it's a potential snow day. What I'm suggesting to you is that if in fact, all of a sudden tomorrow I have to close, I have kids already on remote and kids I have to move to remote. So what that means is, depending on how we're doing it in the platform that we're utilizing, Zoom, not Zoom, taking the kids that were in Zoom, moving them to Zoom, the kids that are in Zoom, moving them into Zoom, or aren't in Zoom, moving to Zoom, Zoom into Zoom. All of that is not just a flip of the switch for our staff. Individual learning assignments for K-1, one-to-one time with teachers during remote to monitor reading progress. Yes, we'll have a responsibility in some of those areas of reading assessments. Again, all of this is going to depend on who's providing the service during the remote learning time. Do we do it via synchronous with streaming, or is it having to be provided in a different model? For example, maybe if teachers are working with students in the hybrid model, then they can move over to the remote model in the afternoon. That's a financial issue. That's do we have the bodies that are willing to do that? In the hybrid model, if a teacher must quarantine, will all students in that class be moved to remote? Potentially, yes. It depends on was the teacher in the room with the students, then automatically both have to go to remote. If it's just the teacher and it didn't happen in school, it happened over a weekend, it's not connected, again, this is all decisions made above me in terms of I provide the information of what I know, and then the Board of Health, my office, and even the Massachusetts Department of Public Health will be involved on what would be the best and safest practice. So there's a question here about privacy plans to protect. I mean, if anything, I think what we've noticed is that there's very limited privacy unless, or there's a lot of privacy that we want to follow unless the person says it's fine. We will not release student names and situations. It would just simply be that, you know, we have a COVID case. However, we all know how this works. Students will talk, parents will talk. My staff will not be allowed to talk. If they do, they're violating student confidentiality, and that's a violation of their contract. And I can't announce to you if a staff member, a specific staff member, has a C19 positive. It is very hard to control. I would ask parents and families to potentially make sure that talking on social media about underage children is probably one of the worst things that we can do. I think we just simply say it is a C19 case and we go from there. I would ask parents who know that, not print that about their children on social media. But again, these are all best practices that parents have to decide on. Keeping fully remote and hybrid students in sync will be one of the biggest obstacles for us to have to line up with. There's no doubt about that. Everything to do with these models and being synced in is going to require either A, that we're constantly doing video recording, streaming, Zooming, or it's going to break apart in some way. And that's one of the biggest headaches that we have to try to address. Lunches and breakfasts will probably all be served at the elementary level in classrooms. That's a question about breakfast served. It is not true for the Norton Public Schools that K and 1 are not required to wear masks. Our vote includes all students pre-K through 12 and all staff unless there is medical documentation and or behavioral documentation have to wear masks, including on the bus. We've gone with a more robust local decision than the state's general decision. Yeah, lots of people in the hallway question in Georgia. That is correct. Again, without any masks as well. But yes, our model, number one, includes the hybrid model. So you'll never see those types of numbers in our hallways, especially in K through 8. And at the high school, we're going to have to release students in such a way around 6 feet of social distancing, remembering that the building has a capacity of over 1,000 and the building will be at probably around 350. So we feel pretty comfortable with one-way streets, one-way hallways that will be in good shape. We will need support from the staff on making sure that students are, in fact, doing that. We could have, this is a question about a substitute teacher taking over a hybrid course. Yes, that could actually happen. Say if a teacher was infected over the weekend, just like it was a regular sick day, if you will. If a child on a 504 needs additional accommodation for their virtual learning days, what will be the process be for that? Will potentially either be at your regular 504 meeting or your request based on your documentation to have that meeting. And that would happen during the first few weeks of school. Will the school push out any guidelines to parents and students regarding allowing their children to opt out of using the camera on Zoom? Some might not be comfortable displaying their living situation to the entire class and should be respected. Yeah, that's a question that's come up before. I think there's a couple of ways to try to do that. Number one, yes, you can shut off the camera. That's an option you always have. The second one is to actually build in electronically. There's a way for you to put in a green screen. Those would be the best two ways so that in fact people are respected. Some compliments. Champions program, I met with them today. They're going to be publishing to you options available at the JCS, LGN, and Hay for students in K through 8. We don't really see a lot of options. Usually doesn't come up for middle school. We will have before and after school and full day available at a pretty reasonable price to Champions. Though that information should be coming out sooner than later after my meeting with them today. I also announced to my staff options for them as staff members to see if that would help our staff not have to worry as much about their childcare for school age. As for non-school age, that's the biggest headache right now for staff and families. Are we accepting substitute teachers this year? Yes, I have to anytime that I have a hole to fill, if you will. But yes, we're looking for folks. If you're interested, please call my office and speak to Lori Kazadi, and it's just press extension 1, 508-285-0100 and extension 1, Lori Kazadi, and just say you want to apply for that position if that's your interest. I can't, this is a question about the anxious about returning to school after seeing quite a few social media posts of classmates together not wearing masks or social distancing. There's not a whole lot I can do with that except continue to do what I've been doing, which is to say, please be careful on social media because it does send a message to folks, including children. But I can't dictate what happens in folks' private lives, but we do mention it and continue to mention it, especially with my staff. Compliments about champions. Yeah, disciplinary guidelines for use of masks. Yes, there will be. We are going to request the school committee take on a policy for wearing masks. That policy will note the student handbook decision, which will be, in general, a communication to the student to put mask on, age appropriate, of course, followed by parental discussion, followed by not being in school and being required to do remote learning. We do not see this as a First Amendment right, as it's done by some. And I am more than willing to say that for the safety of all, people need to wear masks. And somebody can take me to court and have the courts tell us that we're different. That's probably what it's going to take. And I'm fine with that. And I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. It's just, I want people to be safe. We're all required to stop at our stop sign. I'm not sure why we're not required to wear a mask. Great, person responded that they're looking to be a substitute. Love to have you. Okay, apology for the answering the hallway transition question. Were the process you put in place all schools or just some of them? So every hallway at every school, so you're going to get the big picture of it all that we're doing it. And then one-way streets, markers in the hallway, all of that are all going to be done in our schools. Signage about washing hands, using sanitizer. Outside of every bathroom, there will be a foot sanitizer, which means you hit it with your foot and it goes on your hands. Every time you walk into the building, every time you're in a hallway, every time you go to lunch, every time, or you have lunch, every time you go to recess and you come back in. We have currently 500 gallons of hand sanitizer in our district. And we have thousands of masks. We're working on potential scrubs for some of our teaching staff and paraprofessionals that work in high contact areas. And our PPEs, which will be published in our informational facilities and operations guidelines that I anticipate will be published way before your children step into the building, and actually before the staff do, all has specific guidelines. And then each of the schools, based on the flow, for example, the LGN is different than the JCS because the LGN is a 1-floor building. The middle school is a 3-floor building versus the high school is a 2-floor. Each of those buildings will have different protocols for how that takes place. Students will get more than a question about the updates. Thank you. Will students need more than one mask daily on site? We're going to ask that people send students with their own masks, but we will have in every classroom hundreds of masks available for something breaks, something gets really sweaty and sticky and you just need a new one. We've been looking at the potential for facial wipes Of course, these are very individual issues because of students' potential to be allergic to something, but we're looking at all that, and we will have multiple available to students, masks available. Will Champions full daycare students be in the school at the same time as school is in session? That is correct. In a different location, no cross between the two sides. Right now, we're potentially using our cafeteria spaces. Champions is going to be running and providing availability to all families. The 4 days question about 4 days for preschool in-person schedule, it'll be a regular schedule 4 days a week. They're trying to determine the best cohort models for that right now. I have a meeting with Mr. Searcy and Ms. Russo next week to be scheduled. Hybrid model information has been provided. It's on our website, and the specifics will be coming out about schools any day now. I think it's very, very important. I appreciate a comment by one of our families here. We took a stance on wearing the mask simply because it supports not only children with children, but it clearly also supports adults with adults and children with adults. I think the Commonwealth has done a good job in continuing to wear masks because it continues to be the one thing that most people agree on makes everybody safe. I do things in my life every day to try to keep other people safe, not necessarily for myself, but because it's part of my job or it's part of my philosophy with my family. So taking a stand on that wasn't difficult for us to do, but we appreciate your support. This is students wear gaiters versus masks. I'm working on that. Right now, the definition from the state has only been the word masks, but we are trying to get a definitive on that. Many people, myself included in the office, use the gaiters. So if I have to just use masks, then that's what we'll note out. Yeah, a question on volunteering. Listen, this is the hardest one. Early on in the school year, we will not be allowing for volunteers. However, I do see us needing volunteers. The question here is going to be that the parent volunteers are stuck to a very specific schedule so that we're not introducing the least amount of new people all the time. So right off the bat on day one, we probably won't do volunteers, probably go through a couple of cycles, but volunteers are what make our schools, especially our elementary schools, go so in so many ways. So we don't want to just shut people out. We will continue if we have to shut down because of a resurgence of COVID, moving into a hybrid model, a remote model. But this whole outside provider learning system, the key here is that is if you will, a very specific curriculum aligned to Massachusetts frameworks and all of that has assessment, it has enrichment, it has activities and all of that, but it currently doesn't have a body with it. And I can't just do this without the body, and the body means a professional staff member that I have. So that's why I'm trying to work on other options. Yeah, kids comment about Champions about the kids have been great about masks. We've been doing the summer camp since July 13th. We've had no issues. We are not eliminating any specials right now, but there'll probably be some changes to how we do it, i.e. traveling of the specials. Champions program I addressed earlier, but yes, we're going to be publishing information to you directly. Thank you for the compliments. I appreciate it. Please, as you see one of my administrators, regardless if you disagree with them, please thank them because I can't tell you how hard these people have worked to try to do good things in a very almost impossible situation. We will question about do parents need to make an appointment about picking up Chromebooks? No, we will have a plan set up for you. We're also looking at training for parents, just to let you know, so that you have how do you call it? You have specifics on how to deal with the Chromebook and who to talk to dealing with their issues and all of that. Right now, the student parking lot at the high school and eliminating parking spots has not been approved, but it is an area that we're looking at because of space. Okay, so I think we have come down to, we've come down to the last questions, trying to model as much as I can. We did say we're going to have a hard stop on all of these meetings of an hour. This won't be the last opportunity. Tonight's will be the same thing, at 6 to 7. For folks that are available in the evening. Thank you to the 160 plus people that participated today. Use the Let's Talk to ask question. I'm going to put it right up here. Just go to the district website. I'm just changing my name to Let's Talk. It's kind of funny because that's all I do now. If you go to the district website at www.norton.k12.ma.us, you'll look right on the front page. There's a Let's Talk icon. Very simple. Hit it, hit the icon, and you can go in there. If you send your question anonymously, I cannot respond to you. The system is just, I'd have to go into the background of it to figure it out, and that's not the principle of an anonymous. Anonymous is usually something around bullying, not a question directed. No question is frustrating. I know sometimes I sound a little quick. That's not personal to any question that you ask. I might have had one of those today when I responded to somebody's opinion. I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but we're trying to provide, I think Norton Public Schools has provided more meetings to parents than most schools. And as I said earlier, as you see, our administrators consider saying thank you for their hard work and their time away from their family. They've never worked harder. They haven't seen a pay raise, and God knows none of that is fair as far as I'm concerned. But at the end of the day, we'll make sure that they get their due. They continue to work hard, ask questions. Please stop rumors. If you hear a rumor, just send me a direct email if you need to, and I'll address it via the Facebook, our social media, and so on and so forth. Okay, folks.
Joe,
yes.
one thing. So we had a parent ask about the pre-K program and what it will look like for in-person learning and what the protocols will be for that.
Yes.
It specifically asked about desks. We are actually looking at getting desks, small tables for all of the students in there, and they will be 6 feet apart. We're also looking at yoga mats that are 6 feet long to keep the kids spaced out if they're on like the rug area and things like that. So, but we're adequately providing for the social distancing. The centers will look entirely different than they normally do in terms of learning and things like that. But we are working on all the details now and trying to be as thoughtful and safe as possible while also trying to give them a pre-K experience.
Wade, anything you want to add on facilities?
No, I think you covered it all. Thanks.
So Wade's been we're going to be publishing, so that you know, it's about this thick, all of the chemicals that we've always used, all the new chemicals that we're using that are all EPA and CDC and everything else supported for children. Our biggest area to address is wipes, so that a student could, you know, tap down their own area, if you will, at the end of the day, or so that would cut down on other cleaning that was specific that we have to do, although we will be cleaning every desk, table, so on and so forth on a regular basis. We have the Farger systems that are 99.99%, which is the only chemicals that you really can get that you can utilize in the school system is at the highest rate. So, we're publishing that for everybody to have. Again, everybody has opinions on that too. We're using EPA and CDC guidelines. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. Again, use the Let's Talk if that's a place that you want to go. Please reach out and stay safe. Have a great day. Thanks, guys, very much.